healings, healthy boundaries, and second chances. These are some of the exciting things that Second Passover bring to us. Hello, my fellow humans. I'm Katrina, and I'm owned by love. For all those who need healings, at the very end, I have a special blessing that I'd like to pronounce upon you at the end of this video. Some of you may be scratching your heads right now going, I didn't know there was a second Passover. Yes, there's a second Passover. It is mentioned in Numbers chapter 9 and also in Hezekiah's time. And there's going to be some fulfillments in Isaiah that are future fulfillments of this holy day. In order to understand the second Passover, we have to understand the first Passover because they have similar meanings of their significances. So I will go through that story first in my own words, and then we will go into the extra significances that second Passover has for us today. The very first Passover happened in Egypt. The children of Israel were slaves in Egypt, and God wanted to get them out of there. He told the children of Israel to take a lamb of the first year old and slaughter it, take some of its blood, and put it on the doorposts of their house. This was the first thing that they were to do. Then they were to roast the lamb, bring it into their house with bitter herbs, and to eat it in their houses and don't come out till morning. And make sure to burn up the rest of the lamb and make sure there isn't any of it left. It's all gone by the morning. They did this. They listened and they did this. And while they were in their homes, a death angel was sent by God to go through all of Egypt, and those that did not have blood on their doorposts, the firstborn males of all Egypt died that didn't have that blood on the doorposts. It was devastating to have so many dead. There wasn't a house that didn't have at least one dead in it that was of the houses that did not have the blood on the doorposts. This made the Egyptians scared and pushed the Israelites out into the wilderness, and they were set free. That is the first Passover, and they were told that they were to keep this day every year of a Passover for the rest of their generations, from generation to generation, and to teach their children the significance of how God had set them free from being slaves in Egypt. This is the first Passover. After the children of Israel left Egypt, they were told by God, Jehovah, to celebrate their freedom, called the Passover, every year at the same time of the year. A year passed, and their very first Passover outside of Egypt came. They were at Mount Sinai, and they started celebrating it. Some of the men came up to Moses and said, we're unclean. We had to take care of a dead body, and because we're unclean, we can't partake of the Passover. But we want to take care of the Passover. What do we do? Moses went, okay, that's a problem. Let me get back to you on that. He went and inquired of Jehovah God and came back to the men. What Jehovah God had said is, okay, all those who either go on a long journey from here on out that are too far away on the first Passover to keep the first Passover, we're going to make a second Passover. Or if you are unclean for a very good reason and cannot keep the first Passover, you can partake of a second Passover. The second Passover is to happen 1 month after the first Passover. This is how we get a second Passover. And the second Passover has significances for us even today, even as the first Passover does. Next, we are going to explore those great things that we can get out of the second Passover for us in our everyday lives today. How exciting what happened thousands of years ago and the significance it has for us today. What happened back at Mount Sinai on the first Passover shows the Father's heart towards our situations that come up. The first Passover was to celebrate how God had brought the children of Israel out of slavery, out of Egypt, and how we're out of slavery, out of slavery, out of slavery. It's wonderful. And they wanted to celebrate it, but they had a boundary of, if you're unclean, you can't keep the Passover. They had to be unclean because they had to deal with a dead body. And they came to God with their whole heart, going, we want to celebrate too. God said, because you're coming and you have the right heart, I will give you a second chance. I will give you a second Passover. God is trying to give us the chances He wants to have us. He wants to have you and me be with Him together, healthily. Now, you're probably wondering, how is healthy boundaries showing in that story work for us today of being excited about anything? Because we don't tend to like boundaries. Well, if you have ever raised children or been a child that you've seen other children who have not had healthy boundaries, we don't grow up well. Notice that when we don't have healthy boundaries, we don't learn how to treat each other properly. And we don't even learn how to treat ourselves properly and in balance with everything. Healthy boundaries to God fall within two commandments. Loving Him with our whole heart, might, and soul, because He's a good Father and He only wants good things for us. And the second commandment is like it. Love our neighbor as ourself. We show God that we love Him by loving our neighbor and ourself. Notice it has to be, we have to respect ourselves, respect our neighbors, and it shows that we love God. This brings one-ment in the world. It brings peace in the world. It brings peace in the whole world together and peace within our own selves. That's what we're all seeking for. That's what we all want. And healthy boundaries is one of the huge ingredients that's necessary for us to be able to grow up properly. The story of King Hezekiah is an exciting one of what happens with a second Passover during his time. He gains the power of the kingdom of Judah when he is 25 years old from his father who had died. And he knows that his kingdom has been practicing paganism for generations, and his father kept paganism. It was a mess. What does paganism do? It makes you worship other gods, and it also has rules and things that are not kind to other people. Some of them have human sacrifices included and doing all kinds of cruel things to other human beings. It's a mess. And Hezekiah knew that they were in trouble because of it. He called the priests and the Levites to come to him and told them to go clean out the temple and get it ready. This was just around the time of the first Passover, when the first Passover would take place in the year for that year. It was too close for them to get things ready and get things cleaned out. Everything was unclean. The boundary of being able to come to God with cleanliness was not there. So Hezekiah said, okay, we'll keep the second Passover. And with the second Passover, he did something that was really noble. All of his brothers who had been taken away in slavery into Assyria, they were under Assyrian rule, of the tribes that had been overtaken many generations before, had not kept the ways of God even longer than the kingdom of Judah had done. So he told all of them that were in that captivity, that had lost part of their identity, he went ahead and had messengers go out and say, come on, come back to Jehovah. If you come back to God, he can take your children out of slavery and bring you back, and everything can go back to peace the way that God said. Many of them laughed at him, but some of them of Israel that were under the ruling of Assyria did come. The second Passover was exciting. It was a coming back of a whole nation that had turned away. And they were excited. They were celebrating. The people that came that were from the Israelites that had been taken away into slavery and into the Assyrian Empire had come, and they were still unclean. And they didn't understand a whole lot because they hadn't been taught for many generations about these things. And sickness started going amongst the people there while they were celebrating. This was a very scary thing, I'm sure, at the time. I mean, if you're in the middle of a celebration with a bunch of people, especially during the times that we live in now, we can understand with COVID and everything else, it can be very scary to have a spreading of some kind of disease. But Hezekiah, he prayed for them to be healed. And this is where the healings come in and shows how God, even in second chances, even allowing healthy boundaries of things still naturally coming about that usually come about from not doing things properly with sicknesses could possibly come upon you, that he still is merciful. I don't know why some of you are sick. I'm not saying anything. I don't have any idea. I don't think that all sickness comes from something you've done personally wrong. I don't think that. But I do believe that God believes in healing, and he believes in second chances for us all. I want to pray this prayer over you that Hezekiah asked God, Jehovah, for the people to intercede, and they were healed to continue to celebrate this good God that they had with the Passover, showing that the Passover is about freedom. It's about freedom from sickness. It's about freedom from death spiritually. It's about freedom from slavery. So I'm going to pray for that for you now, for all of those who need prayer for healing. Hezekiah was a wonderful king. As soon as the people started getting sick, he started interceding for them right away. And Jehovah, God, heard even in the second chances when the people were sick, he healed them. This story is found in Second Chronicles chapter 30, verses 18 and 19. And I wish to pray the same thing over you that Hezekiah said. May the good Lord provide atonement on behalf of whoever sets his whole heart on seeking God, Jehovah, the God of his ancestors, even though not according to the purification rules of the sanctuary. I bless all of you with health, with freedom, and with peace that the second Passover gives to us through our Messiah, who paid the price for us to have all three of those things.